Hotel CEO's secret romance with his intern. Watch the unexpected twist. In this hotel romance story, Emily, an ambitious young intern, begins her journey at the luxurious Dax Hotel. Her first day quickly turns into a whirlwind of unexpected challenges, including a memorable encounter with William, the hotel CEO. As their paths continue to cross, sparks fly and emotions build, setting the stage for an unforgettable romance. Will Emily balance her career ambitions with the unexpected feelings she develops for William? Tune in to find out. If you enjoy this journey, make sure to hit like and subscribe to Stories TH for more amazing stories. An unfortunate start. Emily, a young and ambitious woman, had high hopes for her first day as an intern at Dax Hotel. She had always dreamed of working in the hospitality industry and was excited to prove herself. Little did she know, her first day would not go as planned. It all started when the bus she was on broke down halfway to the hotel. Frustrated, she tried to hail a taxi, only to find that the driver took an unexpected detour, making her even later than she already was. And to top it all off, as she rushed to get inside the hotel, her heel got stuck in a grate near the entrance. She tugged and yanked, but it seemed like her shoe had become one with the ground. With no time to waste, Emily finally freed her foot and sprinted toward the entrance. Her hair tousled from the wind and her confidence quickly slipping away. She darted across the lobby, her eyes fixed on the elevator that was about to close. "Wait, hold it," she yelled, running at full speed. She reached the door just in time, and with one last push, squeezed in. But her momentum was too strong. Emily crashed into a tall man in a sharp black suit, causing him to stumble slightly. "Ouch," she exclaimed, quickly trying to apologize. She had no idea who this man was, but her foot had landed directly on his. Her heart raced as she watched him rub his sore foot. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," she gasped, her face turning red. "I didn't mean to." The man, clearly startled, looked down at his phone, which had flown out of his hand during the impact. It had landed with a loud thud on the elevator floor. Emily scrambled to pick it up, praying it wasn't broken. She handed it back to him, but he shot her a sharp, annoyed look. "Fantastic. Now my phone is ruined too," he muttered. Emily, trying to lighten the mood, gave a nervous laugh. "Well, at least it survived the fall. Modern phones are pretty tough." The man didn't seem amused, pressing a button on the side of the phone to check if it still worked. The screen flickered and cracked. Emily winced. "Well, I guess it has a new one-of-a-kind design now." He sighed deeply and rubbed his temples, clearly trying to remain calm. Emily's eyes shifted nervously as the elevator jolted and came to a sudden halt, the lights flickering. "Is this part of the decor?" she asked, trying to joke, but the man didn't respond. Instead, he pressed the emergency button, frustrated. "We're stuck," he muttered under his breath. Emily swallowed hard. "Great. Just great. My first day, and I'm stuck in an elevator with a complete stranger." The man shot her a look, clearly trying to contain his frustration. How does someone spill coffee on their own resume? Emily blinked. "Well, it was an accident, but luckily HR only read half of it before the ink smudged." She grinned awkwardly, hoping he would find her misfortune endearing. But before he could respond, the elevator gave another jolt, and the lights flickered once more. "Well, I guess we're stuck for a bit," she said, crossing her arms. He raised an eyebrow. "You talk a lot." "Yeah, I tend to do that when I'm nervous," Emily admitted, her voice quiet. "My brain kind of switches to overdrive when I'm stressed." The man looked at her, his expression softened just slightly. "I can see that." Emily grinned nervously, trying to relax. But instead of the usual awkward silence, she found herself surprisingly comfortable talking to him. Despite her clumsiness and the embarrassing situation, there was something oddly calming about his dry sense of humor. The elevator remained still, and the intercom crackled with a message from the receptionist. "The elevator is currently undergoing maintenance. It should be back up in about 5 minutes." "Great," the man muttered. 5 minutes to reflect on my life choices." Emily laughed. "Tell me about it. You ever do something really embarrassing?" she asked, suddenly feeling a bit more at ease. He raised an eyebrow. "Why would I tell you that?" Because we're stuck in an elevator, and according to the unofficial elevator code, when two people are stuck together, they have to share their embarrassing secrets. He gave her a skeptical look. I've never heard of that code. Of course not, she replied, grinning. I just made it up. After a few seconds of silence, the man sighed. All right, I'll bite. Emily smiled, sitting up a little straighter, eager to hear his story. When he started to speak, Emily could sense that maybe, just maybe, her first day at Dax Hotel wouldn't be as bad as she thought. The first crisis, a talent tested despite the disastrous first meeting, Emily was determined to prove herself at Dax Hotel. She had no intention of letting a few embarrassing moments define her first day. As soon as she set foot in the kitchen, she could feel the weight of expectations. Her internship was not just about learning the ropes, but about showing her capabilities, and Emily was ready to rise to the challenge. Her first task was to observe the hotel's food operations, a crucial part of Dax's five-star service. She watched the staff meticulously, her sharp eyes catching small details others seemed to overlook. It wasn't long before she began to notice inconsistencies in the menu, flaws in the service, and areas that could be improved. Some dishes seemed to lack the depth they promised, while others had a presentation that didn't match the hotel's high standards. Emily's background in food analysis and service quality gave her an edge in identifying these areas, but she knew it wouldn't be easy to voice her opinions. After hours of observing, Emily approached William, the hotel CEO. She hesitated for a moment, but then decided to speak up. I've been looking at the menu and the service flow, she began, her voice calm but assertive. I think there are a few inconsistencies that could be improved. William raised an eyebrow, surprised by her directness. Go on, he said, giving her his full attention. With confidence, Emily explained how certain items on the menu could be better paired, how the presentation could be more sophisticated, and how the overall guest experience could be elevated. William listened intently, taking notes, clearly impressed by her insight. Her approach was systematic, and for someone so new, she displayed an impressive understanding of what was needed to elevate the hotel's reputation. As Emily was wrapping up, she could see that William was already considering her suggestions. It was a small victory, but a significant one. Emily felt the weight of the room shift. Her voice had been heard. As she looked around the kitchen, she could feel the glances of the staff. But not all of them were approving. James Sullivan, the head chef, was standing by the stovetop, his arms crossed. His sharp eyes were fixed on Emily, and his face was a mask of skepticism. James had been working at Dax Hotel for over a decade, and his reputation was untouchable. He was known for his precision in the kitchen, and his ego was just as big as his culinary skills. Who do you think you are? James sneered as he walked up to Emily. You come in here with your fancy suggestions, thinking you can improve everything. You're just an intern with no real experience. Emily stood her ground, unshaken by his harsh words. I'm just offering my perspective. I believe there's always room for improvement. James chuckled, his tone mocking. Improvement? You think you know better than me? You don't even know the first thing about running a kitchen, let alone running this hotel. He gestured around at the bustling kitchen. This is my domain, sweetheart. Stick to taking notes. Emily could feel the tension rising in the room. She knew she wasn't in a position to challenge James outright, but something in her made her want to stand up for herself. I may not have the experience you do, but that doesn't mean I can't see when things can be better. I'm here to help, not to compete. James narrowed his eyes at her. Help? You think you can help? We'll see how long that lasts, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. With a final scoff, he turned back to the stove, clearly done with the conversation. The rest of the kitchen staff watched the exchange with a mix of curiosity and apprehension, but Emily didn't let it bother her. She had learned long ago that standing up for herself was the first step to earning respect. Over the next few days, Emily continued to observe the kitchen and its operations. She worked tirelessly, noting even the smallest of flaws. She would take her observations to William, who, although impressed by her attention to detail, was also cautious. He didn't want to give her too much responsibility too soon, but he couldn't deny the potential he saw in her. Meanwhile, James grew more and more frustrated with Emily's constant critiques. Whenever she pointed out an issue with the food or the service, he would dismiss her suggestions with a wave of his hand or a snide remark. The tension between the two escalated, and it was clear that James was starting to view Emily as a threat to his position in the kitchen. One afternoon, Emily was observing the preparation of a new dish that James had been working on. She watched as he plated the food, her critical eye catching the subtle flaws in the presentation. As James finished and began to walk away, Emily couldn't resist. "James, I think you might want to tweak the presentation a bit. The sauce could be a bit more even, and the garnish looks a bit off-center," she said, trying to sound as respectful as possible. James froze in his tracks, turning to face her. His face darkened, and he took a step forward. "I don't need a trainee telling me how to plate my dishes," he hissed. "You think you're some kind of expert now." Emily stood her ground, despite the intimidation in his voice. "No, I'm not an expert, but I know what looks good and what doesn't. I'm just trying to make sure we put out the best product." James's eyes narrowed, his temper flaring. "You're walking on thin ice, Emily," he warned, his voice low and dangerous. "Keep stepping out of line, and you'll find yourself out of here sooner than you think." Emily's heart raced, but she didn't back down. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to let anyone intimidate her into silence. "I'm not going anywhere, James. I'm here to learn and to contribute. If that makes you uncomfortable, then maybe you should take a look at your own work," she said, her tone calm but firm. The kitchen fell into an uneasy silence. The staff exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. James's reputation had always been untouchable, but now there was a shift. Emily had stood up to him, and despite his harsh words, she had gained a sliver of respect from the others. As the days passed, Emily continued to prove herself. Her suggestions for improving the menu were taken more seriously, and William began to rely on her more for her insight into the hotel's operations. She was slowly gaining a foothold in a world where the competition was fierce, and she wasn't about to let anything stop her. But James wasn't done yet. He was watching Emily closely, waiting for her to slip up. He had underestimated her before, but now, with each passing day, it seemed like she was becoming more and more of a challenge. William, on the other hand, saw the potential in Emily, and he was beginning to take an interest in her development. He started to mentor her, sharing his knowledge of the hospitality industry and helping her navigate the challenges that came with the job. Emily's first crisis was far from over. It had only just begun, and as she faced the mounting tension with James, she knew that the real test was just around the corner. The second crisis, challenges in work and personal life. Emily had come a long way since her first chaotic day at Dax Hotel. She had proven herself capable, and her sharp eye for detail had earned her a level of respect from the higher-ups, particularly William. Her confidence was growing, and she felt that she was finally starting to find her footing in the competitive world of hospitality. But as it often goes, life had a way of throwing curveballs when least expected. One afternoon, Emily was tasked with preparing an important report for a major client who was visiting the hotel the following week. It was one of those reports that could make or break the hotel's business deal, and Emily had been working tirelessly on it. She had spent days gathering data, analyzing trends, and organizing the information in a clear, concise manner. As she reviewed the final draft, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Trying to meet her deadlines, she rushed through some last-minute revisions, believing everything was in order. She printed the report and handed it over to her supervisor. However, a few hours later, her heart sank when her supervisor returned to her desk, looking frustrated. "Emily," he said, holding up the report, "this is not what we need. There are critical errors in the data analysis, and the conclusions are all wrong. We can't present this to the client." The weight of his words hit Emily like a ton of bricks. Her stomach churned as she thought about the hours she had spent meticulously preparing it. How had she missed something so obvious? Her face turned red with embarrassment. The entire office seemed to be whispering about her mistake, and she could feel the stares from her colleagues. She had let herself down, and worse, she had let the hotel down. Feeling humiliated and overwhelmed, Emily retreated to her small cubicle, trying to hide from the looks of disapproval that she imagined were coming her way. She couldn't help but wonder if she was in over her head, questioning whether she was truly cut out for this job. But that wasn't the only problem on her mind. As if things weren't already tough enough at work, Emily's personal life was falling apart too. She received a phone call that evening from her father, telling her that her mother had been admitted to the hospital after her health had rapidly declined. Her heart dropped into her stomach as she listened to the news. Her mother had been struggling with her health for a while, but now it seemed like the situation was more serious than ever. The news hit Emily hard. She had always been close to her mother, and the thought of losing her or being unable to help was unbearable. She felt torn between her responsibilities at the hotel and the urgent need to be there for her family. What was she supposed to do? Her internship was important, but her mother's health was something she couldn't ignore. The following day, as Emily sat in her cubicle, staring at the flawed report that had already been returned to her, she felt like she was drowning. Her personal life was in turmoil, and her professional life seemed to be crumbling around her. It was the perfect storm of stress, and she didn't know how to weather it. Just when she thought she couldn't take any more, William walked in. Emily hadn't seen him much lately, as he had been busy overseeing other projects, but she couldn't help but notice how his presence seemed to have a calming effect on her. He walked up to her desk, his usual confident stride softened by an empathetic look in his eyes. "Emily, I heard about the report," he began, his voice gentle but direct. "Don't worry, we'll fix it. You've made a mistake, but it's not the end of the world. We'll work through it." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. She had been so focused on her failure that she hadn't expected anyone, especially William, to be so understanding. He wasn't just addressing the work issue. He was addressing the weight she was carrying in her personal life, too. It was like he could see through her frustration and self-doubt. "But," she said, her voice faltering, "there's more. My mom, she's in the hospital. I don't know what to do. I feel so torn. I can't be in two places at once." William nodded, his expression softening. He reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Emily, I understand. Family comes first, always. Don't feel like you have to choose between your work and your family. I'll make sure you get the support you need here. You've already proven yourself, and we're not going to let one mistake define you. Take the time you need to be with your mom. We'll handle everything here." Emily was taken aback. She hadn't expected William to be so kind and supportive, especially considering how busy he was. His words of encouragement were exactly what she needed to hear. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. William wasn't just her boss. He was showing her that he cared about her well-being. I don't know what to say," Emily whispered, her eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you. I didn't expect you to understand." William smiled warmly. "I've been in your shoes before, Emily. I know what it's like to juggle work and personal challenges. Don't worry, we'll get through this together." With that, Emily felt a renewed sense of determination. She still had a long way to go to prove herself, but now she knew she wasn't alone. William's support made her feel like she could take on anything. The next few days were a blur for Emily. She split her time between the hospital and the hotel, trying to manage both her personal responsibilities and work. With William's support, she was able to focus on fixing the report and presenting a revised version to the client. She didn't let her failure define her. Instead, she used it as motivation to do better. Emily's mother's condition gradually stabilized, and although the stress of balancing work and personal life remained, Emily knew that she could count on the people around her to help her through difficult times. She felt closer to William than ever before, grateful for his unexpected kindness and guidance. As Emily navigated these challenges, she began to understand something important. Success in both her professional and personal life didn't mean doing everything perfectly. It meant leaning on others, being honest with herself, and pushing through adversity. And with William's support, she knew that anything was possible. The third crisis. Emerging feelings after several weeks of working together, Emily began to notice a subtle change in William's demeanor toward her. Initially, their interactions were strictly professional. He was the CEO, and she was just an intern trying to prove herself in the competitive world of hospitality. But as time went on, Emily couldn't ignore the small shifts in his behavior. He seemed to pay more attention to her work, offering praise and constructive feedback in a way that felt more personal than professional. He was starting to respect her not only for her work ethic, but for her personality too. Emily's confidence had grown since she first started at Dax Hotel, and she had proven herself capable time and time again. But William's attention felt different. He was no longer the distant, intimidating boss. He was someone who genuinely seemed to appreciate her insights and contributions. It was a shift that made her heart flutter, but she quickly brushed it aside. She had a job to do, and she couldn't afford to get distracted. One afternoon, after a particularly long meeting where Emily had presented a new proposal for the hotel's marketing strategy, William asked her to stay behind for a brief chat. She was used to these one-on-one discussions by now, but there was something about the way he asked that made her stomach flutter. "Emily, I wanted to thank you for your hard work recently. You've really been a valuable asset to the team," William said with a small but sincere smile. "Thanks, William," she replied, her voice steady but her heart pounding. She had grown used to William's praise, but there was something about the way he said it this time that made her feel different, more special, more seen. "How about we grab dinner tonight? We can go over some of the things we've discussed in the meeting today, and you can finally relax a bit," he suggested casually, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Emily blinked, taken aback. "Dinner?" she repeated, her voice slightly higher than usual. "You mean, with you?" William raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by her surprise. "Of course. I thought it might be a good chance to talk about the project, and besides, you've been working so hard lately. You deserve a break." Emily hesitated for a moment. Her thoughts were spinning. Dinner with William? He was her boss, and this wasn't just a casual invite between colleagues. This felt like something more. Was it possible that he saw her as more than just an intern? Was she misinterpreting his gestures of kindness? "Okay," she said, her voice betraying a nervous edge. "Dinner sounds great. Thanks." That evening, Emily found herself at a fancy restaurant with William, the man who had once been an intimidating figure in her life, now sitting across from her in a more relaxed setting. They talked about work at first, discussing the latest project updates, but soon the conversation veered off course. They talked about everything from their childhoods to their favorite movies to random facts they found amusing. Emily found herself laughing more freely than she had in a long time, and William's smile seemed to grow wider with every joke. It was during this dinner that Emily realized just how easy it was to talk to him, how much they had in common, and how comfortable she felt in his presence. There was an undeniable chemistry between them, something that neither of them could ignore. It felt like the walls that had once separated them, boss and intern, professional and personal, had started to crumble. As the night wore on, Emily's nerves faded away, and she found herself looking at William in a different light. He wasn't just her boss anymore. There was a tenderness in his eyes, a warmth in his smile, and an attentiveness to her that made her heart race. She had always admired his confidence and leadership, but now she saw him in a way she hadn't before. As a man who, despite his powerful position, was still human, someone who could share vulnerabilities and jokes just like anyone else. When dinner ended, William walked her to her car, his steps matching hers in a comfortable silence. As they reached her car, he turned to her with a smile. "Thank you for tonight, Emily. It was nice to just talk without all the work stuff," he said, his tone light but sincere. "Yeah, I agree," Emily replied, her voice soft. "It was really nice to just be normal for a bit." She reached for the door handle, but then stopped, feeling a sudden rush of nerves. She turned to face him, and for a brief moment, their eyes locked. It was like the world around them disappeared, leaving just the two of them standing there on the edge of something new. "Good night, William," Emily said, breaking the silence. "Good night, Emily," he replied with a smile that made her heart skip a beat. As she drove home that night, Emily couldn't stop thinking about their dinner. Her mind was racing with thoughts of him, of the way he made her feel, of the laughter they shared, and of the connection that had started to grow between them. But as the night wore on, a sense of worry crept in. She had started to develop feelings for him, feelings that went beyond respect and admiration. And that was dangerous. She couldn't afford to get involved with her boss. It could complicate everything, both at work and in her personal life. But even as she tried to push the thoughts out of her mind, she couldn't help but wonder, was there something more to their connection? Was it possible that William felt the same way, or was it just a moment of fleeting companionship? The next day, Emily walked into the office, her thoughts still consumed by the dinner and the moments they shared. She couldn't look at William without feeling a flutter at her chest, but at the same time, she knew she had to keep her professional composure. She couldn't let herself get distracted. The stakes were too high, and her position as an intern was already precarious. However, as the day went on, she realized that something had shifted between them. William's attention seemed to linger on her more than usual. He made small comments about her work, about her progress, and even complimented her in front of others. But there was an underlying layer to his praise now, something unspoken that Emily couldn't quite put into words. She knew she was falling for him, and she knew she couldn't afford to act on those feelings. But the more she tried to ignore them, the more they seemed to grow. It was becoming increasingly difficult to separate her professional life from her personal feelings. As the day came to a close, Emily found herself standing in front of William's office door once again. She was about to knock when she heard his voice from inside. "Come in, Emily," he called out. With a deep breath, she opened the door and stepped inside, ready to face whatever was coming next. Little did she know, the dinner they had shared was just the beginning of something much more complicated than either of them could have imagined. The fourth crisis, a major decision. Emily had reached a pivotal moment in her life. After months of working closely with William, things had undeniably changed between them. The once professional and distant relationship between boss and intern had evolved into something more personal, something far more complicated than she had ever expected. Emily was now faced with a decision that would impact not only her career, but her future. For weeks, Emily had tried to push aside the growing feelings she had for William. She had always respected him, admired his work ethic, and his leadership at the hotel. But over time, she had come to realize that her feelings for him had deepened into something more. The dinners, the moments of connection, and the times they shared in and outside of the office had made it hard to ignore. She couldn't deny it any longer. She had fallen for him. But as much as she felt drawn to William, Emily knew that their relationship could complicate everything. She had worked hard to get where she was, and she wasn't ready to let go of her dreams for a potential relationship. She had spent years fighting to get into the hospitality industry, and now she was finally proving herself. She had worked long hours, put in the effort, and earned the respect of her colleagues. Giving all that up for a personal relationship with William seemed reckless, even if her heart told her otherwise. The weight of her decision hung heavy on her shoulders as the days passed. Emily knew she couldn't ignore her feelings, but she also couldn't afford to jeopardize her career at the Dax Hotel. She had to find a way to balance both her personal desires and professional aspirations. One afternoon, after a particularly long day of meetings and hotel events, Emily couldn't take it anymore. She had tried to focus on her work, burying herself in reports and proposals, but her mind kept drifting back to William. She needed answers, and she needed closure. More than anything, she needed to know what William truly felt. With a mixture of nerves and determination, Emily decided to confront him. She waited until after office hours when the hotel had quieted down and most of the staff had gone home. She knocked on his office door, and when William called out for her to enter, she stepped inside, her heart racing. William looked up from his desk, slightly surprised to see her standing there, but his expression quickly softened when he saw the look in her eyes. There was something different about the way she was standing, more confident, more resolved. Emily took a deep breath before speaking. "William, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "Of course," William replied, sitting up straight and gesturing for her to sit down. "Is everything okay?" "I'm not sure," Emily admitted, biting her lip nervously. She hesitated for a moment before continuing. I need to know how you feel. About me. About us." William's expression changed, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. He had clearly not expected this question, but he didn't hesitate to respond. "Emily," he began, his voice quieter now. "I've always respected you. I admire your work, your dedication, and your passion for what you do." He paused, as if collecting his thoughts. "And somewhere along the way, I realized that my feelings for you have grown. I didn't want to admit it, but I've developed feelings for you." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had suspected as much, but hearing him say it out loud sent a rush of relief through her. Yet, she knew the gravity of the situation, and she wasn't ready to let her emotions cloud her judgment. "But," William continued, his gaze steady, "I've also been worried. This," he motioned between them, "could create complications, both for us and for the hotel. I know you've worked hard to get to where you are, and I don't want to risk that for you." Emily's chest tightened. She had expected the hesitation, the doubt. She knew better than anyone how precarious their situation was. But hearing William express his concerns made her realize that, despite his feelings, he was just as worried as she was. "I don't want to lose my career here," Emily said, her voice soft but firm. "I've worked too hard to let anything get in the way of that." William nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I understand, and I respect that. I want what's best for you, Emily. You deserve to succeed, and I don't want to be the one who jeopardizes that." Emily sat in silence for a moment, considering his words. She had spent so much time trying to navigate her feelings for him that she hadn't taken the time to think about what she truly wanted. She had dreamed of a successful career in the hotel industry for as long as she could remember, and she wasn't willing to give that up for anything, not even love. "I don't want to lose what we have," Emily said quietly, finally breaking the silence. "But I also don't want to let my emotions get in the way of my career. I'm not sure how we can do this, but I think we need to find a way to keep things professional." William's eyes softened, and he gave her a small smile. "I agree. We'll take things slow, and if at any point it feels like it's too much or too complicated, we'll stop. We'll make sure that our work doesn't suffer because of this." Emily felt a weight lift off her chest. She had her answer, and while it wasn't easy, it was the right one. She wasn't ready to give up on her future, but she also wasn't willing to give up on the connection she had with William. "Okay," Emily said, her voice steady now. "We'll do it your way. We'll keep things professional, but I'm not giving up on this." "Not yet." William nodded, a mixture of relief and understanding in his eyes. "Neither am I, Emily." As Emily left his office that night, she felt a sense of clarity she hadn't had in weeks. She had made a decision, and while it wasn't an easy one, it felt right. She would continue her work at Dax Hotel, and she would do so with the same passion and commitment she had always had. But she would also explore what was developing between her and William slowly, carefully, and without letting it affect her professional life. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was in control of her future. She had made her choice, and now it was up to her to find a balance between the two worlds, love and career. Challenges in work and love. Emily had thought that balancing a career and a relationship would be difficult, but nothing could have prepared her for the series of challenges she was about to face. In the high-stress environment of the Dax Hotel, the expectations were high, and the stakes were even higher. At work, she had to manage demanding clients, navigate office politics, and handle sudden emergencies while, on top of all that, her secret relationship with William became more complex by the day. Her relationship with William, the CEO of Dax Hotel, was growing more complicated than Emily had ever imagined. While they had agreed to keep their personal lives under wraps at work to avoid causing disruptions, the secrecy was starting to weigh on Emily. She found herself having to watch every word and action, constantly questioning whether others might suspect something was going on between them. Despite the excitement she felt whenever she saw William or spent time with him, the constant need to hide their connection was becoming a challenge. The professional world they worked in had no room for distractions, and every time they exchanged a glance or a smile, Emily couldn't help but feel the pressure of keeping their relationship a secret. But it wasn't just the secrecy that was causing Emily stress. In her role at the hotel, she was continuously put to the test. She was learning how to navigate complex client requests, solve unexpected problems, and manage the high expectations that came with working at a luxury hotel. At first, she was only given small tasks organizing schedules, managing events, and handling reservations. But recently, she had been trusted with larger responsibilities that involved managing difficult clients, overseeing the staff, and even stepping in to manage emergency situations. One afternoon, things took a turn for the worse when a high-profile client called in to complain about a series of issues with their suite. The guest was furious, demanding to speak with the general manager, and Emily was the one who happened to be available to handle the situation. She immediately went into problem-solving mode, trying to calm the client and figure out what had gone wrong. After quickly checking the guest's file and verifying the issues they had reported, Emily discovered that there had been some confusion over room service orders, which had led to the guest's frustration. She knew she had to fix the issue quickly and maintain the hotel's reputation. With a calm and professional demeanor, Emily offered the guest a solution, upgrading their room to a higher suite and offering them a complimentary dinner at the hotel's restaurant. She also personally arranged for the room service issue to be fixed immediately. The guest, while still a little upset, appreciated her professionalism and willingness to resolve the issue quickly. Emily breathed a sigh of relief when the situation was finally handled, but she also felt the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. It was moments like these that made her realize how much she had to prove to herself and everyone around her. However, as much as she was learning and growing in her professional role, Emily couldn't ignore the strain her secret relationship with William was putting on her emotional well-being. The moments of joy she experienced with him were overshadowed by the fear of getting caught, and every little interaction had to be weighed carefully. One minute, she would feel on top of the world, happy in the knowledge that she was getting closer to William, enjoying their quiet moments together, but the next, she would be overwhelmed with guilt. She wasn't just hiding the relationship from her coworkers, she was hiding it from herself too. As the days passed, Emily continued to balance her demanding job with her growing feelings for William. The hotel was constantly buzzing with activity, and there were always new challenges to face. One week, Emily was tasked with managing a high-stakes corporate event at the hotel. It was a huge responsibility that involved coordinating everything from catering to room bookings and making sure the entire staff was prepared for the influx of guests. As the event approached, the pressure mounted, and Emily found herself becoming more and more stressed. Despite the chaos, William remained a calming presence in her life. They would exchange quiet conversations in the corridors of the hotel, but those brief moments weren't enough to satisfy the deep longing Emily felt. She had to remind herself that they could never fully be open about their relationship, not yet, at least. It was frustrating to love someone and not be able to share that love with the world. The secrecy was starting to weigh heavily on her. The final straw came when Emily was sent on a business trip with William. The trip was supposed to be a straightforward meeting with potential partners, but things took an unexpected turn. The flight was delayed, and a series of miscommunications led to the hotel's accommodations not being ready when they arrived. Emily found herself on the phone, juggling multiple issues at once while trying to keep everything running smoothly. William, despite his usual composed demeanor, was starting to feel the pressure as well. His calm exterior cracked a bit as the stress of the situation mounted. As Emily stepped into the conference room for an emergency meeting to resolve the issues, she suddenly received an urgent call. A guest at the hotel had experienced a medical emergency, and Emily had to act quickly. She was told that the guest's condition was worsening, and they needed assistance immediately. Without thinking twice, Emily sprang into action, instructing the hotel staff to make the necessary arrangements for the guest's care and ensuring that the medical team was en route. It was an intense moment that demanded her full attention. Her ability to remain calm under pressure impressed both the hotel staff and William, who watched from the sidelines. He had seen Emily handle difficult situations before, but this time, her decisiveness and quick thinking stood out in a way that he hadn't expected. When the crisis was over, Emily finally took a moment to breathe. She had managed to diffuse the situation, but the emotional toll was heavy. Her heart was racing, and her body ached from the stress. She realized that while she had always prided herself on her ability to handle the pressure, The reality of her situation, balancing a high-pressure job and a secret relationship, was taking a toll on her health and well-being. Later that night, after the workday had ended, Emily sat down with William to debrief. They were sitting in a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, the soft lighting around them offering a sense of calm after the chaos. William looked at Emily, his eyes soft with admiration. "You were amazing today," he said quietly, breaking the silence. Emily gave a small smile, but the weight of her emotions was clear on her face. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," she admitted, her voice shaky. "The stress, the constant need to hide everything, it's starting to get to me." William reached over and placed a hand on hers, his touch reassuring. "We'll get through this, Emily. You've handled everything so far with grace, and I know you'll continue to do so. But I also know it's not easy. You don't have to carry all of this alone." For the first time in a long while, Emily allowed herself to lean on someone else. She wasn't used to admitting when things were tough, but hearing William's words of encouragement gave her the strength she needed to keep moving forward. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to push through the challenges, both in her career and her personal life. As they sat together in the quiet hotel lobby, Emily realized something important: she wasn't alone. She had William by her side, and that made all the difference. Struggles at work and personal growth. Emily had always prided herself on her ability to handle challenges, but the next few weeks would test her in ways she hadn't anticipated. After managing the emergency situation on the business trip, she was assigned an important project at the hotel that would not only require her organizational skills, but also her creativity and leadership. This was no ordinary task. The project involved redesigning a section of the hotel services, including rebranding the luxury packages, improving customer experiences, and brainstorming ways to attract new clientele. From the very beginning, Emily knew this project would be different. It wasn't just about following orders or making sure everything went according to plan. It required innovative thinking and the ability to lead a team to make the changes happen. She would be responsible for overseeing every detail, from brainstorming new ideas to implementing them and managing everyone involved. The weight of responsibility was heavier than anything she had felt before, but she was determined to succeed. At first, she struggled to find her footing. Emily had always excelled in customer service and managing day-to-day tasks, but this project called for much more. She found herself constantly reviewing her ideas, wondering if they were creative enough or if they would be well received by the team. Emily had always been the type of person who doubted herself when faced with challenges, and this project seemed like a mountain she wasn't sure she could climb. To make matters more difficult, her colleagues seemed less than impressed with her vision. Some were supportive, but many questioned whether she had the leadership skills to pull off such a significant project. Her doubts were compounded by their skepticism, and she started to feel like she might not be cut out for the position. But Emily was determined to prove herself. She reminded herself that this was her chance to shine and show everyone what she was capable of. One of the biggest obstacles was dealing with the pressure from William, her secret love interest and the CEO of Dax Hotel. While he had been a huge source of support for her, Emily couldn't deny that his presence also created a great deal of tension. Every time he offered advice or checked in on her progress, it made her feel both encouraged and overwhelmed. She appreciated his support, but his attention also made her nervous. She couldn't help but wonder if her performance in the workplace was being influenced by her growing feelings for him. Was he simply trying to help, or did his interest in her go beyond a professional concern? Emily couldn't escape the sense of unease that William's proximity brought. While she had always been able to compartmentalize her emotions, this time it was different. She realized that every time she faced a challenge, her thoughts turned to him. What if he didn't approve of her work? What if he saw her as just another employee instead of someone capable of stepping into a leadership role? Despite her doubts, Emily pressed on. She knew this project was important not only for the hotel, but also for her future. She began researching the latest trends in luxury hospitality, coming up with fresh, out-of-the-box ideas that she believed would transform the hotel's offerings. Her confidence began to build as she started to see her ideas take shape. She worked late into the nights, developing presentation materials and proposals, tweaking every detail until she felt that it was perfect. It wasn't easy, but Emily was committed to making this work. As the weeks went by, Emily started to notice a change in her demeanor. She became more assertive in meetings, more vocal about her ideas, and more willing to take charge when others hesitated. She was no longer the shy intern trying to prove herself. She had become a force to be reckoned with. Emily's colleagues, who had initially doubted her abilities, began to take notice. They saw how dedicated she was to her work, how she took the lead with grace, and how she handled every challenge with resilience. The turning point came when Emily had to present her ideas to the hotel senior management. She had worked tirelessly on the proposal, perfecting every detail and anticipating potential objections. Standing before the board, Emily felt her heart racing, but she forced herself to remain calm. As she presented her plan, detailing everything from the new customer experience strategies to the marketing campaigns, she could see the board members becoming more engaged. She answered every question confidently, and when the presentation was over, the room was filled with approval. Emily had done it. She had convinced them that she was more than capable of handling the project. William, who had been quietly observing from the back of the room, was impressed. As the board members began to discuss next steps, William stood up and walked over to Emily. He gave her a small smile and said, "You did great. You've come a long way." Emily's heart skipped a beat. His approval meant everything to her. She smiled back, but deep down, she couldn't ignore the sense of pride and fulfillment she felt in that moment. She had not only proven herself to the management team, but also to herself. She was capable. She was ready. As Emily continued to work on the project, her confidence grew. She no longer second-guessed her decisions or allowed self-doubt to hold her back. She began to step into her role as a leader with ease. But as her professional life flourished, her personal life became more complicated. Her feelings for William had only deepened as they spent more time together, collaborating on the project. They had always kept their relationship secret, but the chemistry between them was undeniable. Emily was torn between her growing love for William and her desire to succeed in her career. She knew that if she didn't find a way to balance her feelings and her work, it could jeopardize everything she had worked so hard to achieve. One night, after a long day of work, Emily found herself alone in the hotel bar, sipping on a glass of wine. William, as usual, was working late, but this time, Emily felt the weight of their secret more than ever. She couldn't help but wonder if she was losing control of the situation. Was she losing herself in this relationship? Was she allowing her feelings for William to cloud her judgment? When William walked into the bar and sat down next to her, Emily looked at him with a mixture of admiration and uncertainty. She had to be honest with herself. This relationship, this situation, was challenging her in ways she never expected, and it was only going to get more complicated from here. "Are you okay?" William asked, sensing her unease. Emily looked up at him, searching his eyes for answers. "I'm fine," she replied, forcing a smile. But deep down, she knew she wasn't. She wasn't sure what was more difficult, the pressure of her job or the emotional roller coaster of keeping her relationship with William a secret. As they continued to talk, Emily felt a sense of clarity begin to settle over her. She had grown so much in the past few months. She had proven herself at work, earned the respect of her colleagues, and become a stronger person. But she also realized that she needed to find a way to balance her personal and professional lives. She couldn't let one interfere with the other. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. She still had a long way to go in her career, and the complexity of her relationship with William was something she would need to navigate carefully. But Emily was no longer the shy intern she had been when she first walked into the Dax Hotel. She was a professional, and she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The road to success was never smooth, but with determination, strength, and the lessons she had learned, Emily knew she could face anything that came her way. Part 8. The Risky Decision. The Dax Hotel was in the midst of a pivotal meeting, and Emily could feel the weight of the decision before her. She had spent weeks formulating a bold idea, an innovative marketing strategy to revamp the hotel's image. It was a risky move, one that could either propel the hotel to new heights or backfire and leave the company with a major setback. But Emily believed in her concept. She believed it had the potential to make a real difference. As she sat at the long conference table, surrounded by senior managers, Emily's nerves started to set in. She had never been one to shy away from difficult tasks, but this was different. The stakes were higher. If her idea failed, she could lose the respect she had worked so hard to gain. Yet, if it succeeded, she could solidify her place in the company and maybe even earn a permanent role in the future. This was her moment. As she presented her idea, Emily explained her strategy with passion and confidence. It was a radical departure from the hotel's traditional methods. She proposed partnering with local artists to showcase their work in the hotel's lobby, transforming the space into an art gallery. She also suggested a series of unique events, such as wine tastings and intimate concerts, that would appeal to a younger, more eclectic clientele. Emily believed that by creating a more dynamic and artistic atmosphere, the hotel could attract a new wave of guests, increasing both bookings and brand recognition. As she finished presenting her plan, Emily held her breath, waiting for the feedback. The room was silent for a few moments. Finally, one of the senior managers spoke up. "Emily, this is very unconventional," he said, his tone skeptical. "The hotel's brand has always been about luxury and tradition. This doesn't seem to fit." Another colleague chimed in, echoing the concerns. "We've worked so hard to build the Dax brand. Are you sure this is the right direction? It could alienate our current clients." Emily's heart sank. She had anticipated resistance, but hearing it voiced so strongly made her feel vulnerable. She tried to stay composed, but the tension in the room was palpable. As she looked around the table, she saw some colleagues glancing at each other, exchanging uncertain looks. It was clear they were not convinced. But then, a familiar voice interrupted the tension. "I think it's a brilliant idea." William's voice cut through the room, confident and steady. He turned to look at the group, his expression serious. "The hotel is at a crossroads. We need something fresh, something that will set us apart from the competition." Emily's idea could do just that. The room went quiet. Emily looked at William, surprised by his unwavering support. She had been expecting him to remain neutral, but he had chosen to back her. It felt like a lifeline in the midst of the storm. William's words carried weight, and his endorsement gave her a sense of relief. At the same time, Emily couldn't ignore the ripple of tension that passed through the room. She had just been publicly supported by the CEO, and now all eyes were on her. She felt both grateful and exposed. However, as the meeting continued, Emily began to feel the weight of the situation. The initial wave of support from William felt like a small victory, but the underlying tension within the company was impossible to ignore. She knew there were whispers in the halls, rumors about her relationship with William. The decision to back her idea so publicly was not without consequences. It made things complicated, not just for her, but for William as well. As the meeting came to an end, Emily felt a rush of conflicting emotions. She had made her case, and for now, her idea was on the table. But the cost of her decision was becoming clear. The rumors about her and William had already started to spread, and the speculation was beginning to feel overwhelming. Later that day, Emily and William had a brief moment to speak alone in his office. As she entered, she could sense the tension between them. The air was thick with unspoken words, and Emily couldn't help but feel the weight of their situation. "You did well in there," William said, breaking the silence. His voice was warm, but there was something guarded about his expression. "I'm not sure it's enough," Emily admitted, her voice tinged with doubt. "The resistance is strong, and I don't know if they'll actually go for it. I just thought it was the right time to take a chance." William looked at her, his gaze softening. "Sometimes, the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards, and I think your idea has potential." But Emily felt her heart race. She knew the but was coming, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. "But what?" William sighed and leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "But I think you know what this is doing to us, to our dynamic in the company. We can't keep pretending that everything is normal. Emily swallowed, trying to process what he was saying. I don't want this to affect my work, she said, her voice quiet but determined. I want to be taken seriously. I don't want my relationship with you to overshadow everything else. William studied her for a long moment, as if weighing his next words carefully. I understand. I don't want that either. But it's not easy to separate the personal from the professional, especially when we work together so closely. People are already talking. Emily nodded, her stomach tightening. I know. I can't ignore that. I don't know what the future holds for us, Emily, William said, his voice low. But I do know that we can't keep going down this road if it jeopardizes your career. We have to make a decision, and it's not just about the project. It's about what we're willing to risk for each other. Emily felt a lump form in her throat. This was more complicated than she had ever imagined. She had come to care for William deeply, but the weight of their secret relationship was starting to feel like too much to carry. She wanted to succeed at work, but she couldn't deny that her feelings for him were only growing stronger. And now, the risk of losing both her career and the man she cared about seemed more real than ever. I need to think about this, she said quietly. I can't make a decision right now. I need to figure out what matters most to me. William nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Take your time. Just know that whatever you decide, I'll support you. But you have to decide what's best for you, Emily. As she left his office, Emily's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The risky decision had already set everything in motion, and now she had to decide what was worth fighting for. Could she continue to pursue her career at Dax Hotel while navigating the complications of her relationship with William? Or was it time to make a choice, sacrificing one for the other? Emily wasn't sure, but she knew this was a decision she couldn't take lightly. The stakes were high, and she had to weigh her heart against her ambition. Emotions intertwined with work. The growing closeness between Emily and William had always been a delicate balancing act. From the very beginning, they had kept their relationship a secret, not wanting to disrupt the professional environment at Dax Hotel. What started as an innocent connection had evolved into something deeper, something more complex. But now, as the days passed, Emily was starting to feel the strain of trying to maintain the balance between her emotions and her professional responsibilities. At first, it had been easy to compartmentalize her feelings for William. She told herself that she could keep her personal life separate from her work life, but that quickly became impossible. Every time they crossed paths in the office, whether it was a brief exchange in the hallway or a subtle look across the conference table, Emily felt her heart race. Her attraction to William was undeniable, and the more time they spent together, the harder it became to ignore the tension between them. Despite her best efforts to focus on her work, Emily found herself constantly distracted. Her thoughts kept drifting to William, how he looked at her when he thought no one was watching, the small gestures of kindness he showed her, and the way he made her feel seen and valued. It was hard not to let those feelings seep into her work. And she noticed it. Her productivity started to slip. She would catch herself daydreaming in the middle of meetings, zoning out during important discussions, and finding it difficult to concentrate on the tasks at hand. It was as if her emotions had taken control, leaving her to juggle both her professional duties and her feelings for William. But the real problem wasn't just the distraction it caused. It was the guilt that came with it. Emily knew that she was letting her emotions interfere with her work, and that was something she couldn't ignore. She had always prided herself on being a professional, someone who could keep her emotions in check and focus on the task at hand. Yet now, every time she saw William, she was reminded of how complicated everything had become. Her colleagues, too, had started to notice. Whispers spread throughout the office about the undeniable chemistry between her and William. Emily could sense the judgment, even though no one dared to speak about it directly. It wasn't just the other employees who were noticing. William himself seemed to be more distant. He would check in on her progress with the project, but there was an underlying coldness in his interactions, as if he was trying to keep his distance. Emily knew why, and it only made her feel more conflicted. She didn't want to be the source of any office gossip, but at the same time, she couldn't ignore the fact that her feelings for him had only deepened. One evening, after a long day of working through endless reports and planning for the hotel's upcoming events, Emily found herself alone in the office, scrolling through her phone. The office was quiet, the hum of the air conditioning the only sound breaking the silence. She looked up when she heard the door open and saw William standing there. His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, neither of them spoke. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. Emily stood up, her heart beating faster. She knew this conversation was long overdue. "Of course," she replied, trying to steady her voice. William walked into the room and closed the door behind him. There was a tension in the air that Emily couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the usual professional tension, it felt personal. He looked at her for a moment, and Emily could see the weight of his thoughts behind his eyes. He wasn't the type to speak without thinking, but now he seemed unsure of how to begin. "I've been thinking a lot about us," William said finally, his voice low but clear, "about how everything's been going between us." Emily nodded, feeling her stomach tighten. She had a pretty good idea of where this conversation was headed, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to hear it. "I know we've been keeping things private," William continued, taking a step closer, "and I've noticed how difficult it's been for you. For both of us. And I think it's affecting your work, Emily." Emily's heart sank, but she wasn't surprised by his words. She had been thinking the same thing. She had tried to stay professional, to keep things under control, but it wasn't easy. "I know," Emily said, her voice barely a whisper. "I've been struggling with it. I can't focus like I used to. My work, it's slipping, and I hate it." William's expression softened, but there was a hint of regret in his eyes. "I don't want to be the reason you feel like this," he said, taking another step toward her. "I didn't want this to affect you, your career, or your reputation. But I can see now that it's doing just that. And I'm sorry, Emily." Emily shook her head, trying to keep her emotions in check. "It's not just you. It's me too. I can't seem to turn off my feelings for you, no matter how hard I try. And I hate that it's affecting my work. I don't want people to think I'm distracted or unprofessional because of something that I can't control." William reached out, placing a hand on her arm gently. "I understand, and I hate that we're in this situation. But maybe we need to think about what's best for both of us. What's going to help you focus on your work without all of this emotional turmoil?" The words hung in the air, and Emily felt a lump form in her throat. She knew what he was saying. They couldn't keep going like this, not with the way things were. It wasn't fair to either of them, especially Emily, who had so much to prove in her career. "I don't want to lose you, William," Emily said, her voice cracking slightly. "But I also don't want to ruin my future here because of something I can't control." William exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I don't want to lose you either, Emily. But maybe we need to take a step back. For now, for the sake of your career. And mine." Emily nodded, feeling the weight of his words. This wasn't what she had hoped for, but deep down, she knew it was the right decision. They couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. They needed space to figure things out, to find a balance between their feelings for each other and their professional lives. "I understand," Emily whispered. "I think it's the best thing for both of us right now." William gave her a small, understanding smile. "We'll figure this out. But for now, let's focus on what matters most, your work. You're capable of so much, Emily. I don't want you to forget that." As he turned to leave, Emily felt a pang in her chest. The conversation had been difficult, but it had also been necessary. She had to refocus on what was truly important. She had to regain control of her career, and she had to let go of the emotional attachment she had to William, at least for now. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt a sense of clarity. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to move forward with confidence, without letting her personal life interfere with her professional goals. She wasn't giving up on her dreams, and she wasn't giving up on herself. As she sat back down at her desk, Emily made a silent promise to herself. She would prove that she was capable of achieving greatness on her own without the complications of a secret relationship. She could do this, and she would. The struggles of maintaining the relationship, the delicate balance between Emily's career and her relationship with William, was starting to unravel. They had made progress, even after deciding to step back from their emotional connection in order to focus on their work. But the strain of balancing their personal feelings with their professional lives was proving to be more difficult than either of them had anticipated. Every day at work, the tension between their growing feelings for one another and the need to maintain professionalism weighed on Emily. It was as if she were constantly walking a tightrope, trying not to fall off either side. The quiet glances they exchanged when no one was looking, the subtle gestures that spoke volumes, only made the situation harder. There were moments when she found herself thinking about him, about the way he made her feel and the connection they shared, but she couldn't let those thoughts interfere with her work. But it wasn't just her career at stake anymore. The more Emily tried to focus on her job, the more she realized that the unresolved tension between her and William was beginning to bleed into her personal life. They couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. There were too many unsaid things between them, too much confusion in the air. Emily had tried to push it all aside, focusing on the day-to-day tasks, but deep down, she knew that she couldn't keep ignoring the truth. One afternoon, after yet another long day of meetings and office tasks, Emily found herself alone in her office, her mind racing. The office was quiet, with most of her colleagues heading out for the day. But instead of feeling relieved, Emily felt unsettled. She knew she couldn't keep avoiding the elephant in the room any longer. She had to have a conversation with William. It was time to face the reality of their situation and figure out where they stood. Her hands trembled slightly as she dialed William's extension, her heart racing. It had been a few days since their last conversation, and in that time, the distance between them had only grown. She needed answers, and more importantly, she needed closure. Emily knew that it wasn't just about her feelings for William anymore. It was about her future, her career, and how the two could coexist without falling apart. "William," she said when he answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Can we talk?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line before William responded. "Of course, Emily. Is everything okay?" Emily took a deep breath. "I think it's time for us to have a serious conversation about what's going on between us. We can't keep pretending that nothing's changed. We've been avoiding it for too long." William's voice softened. "I agree. It's been hard for both of us. I've been thinking about it a lot, too." She could hear the sincerity in his voice, and for a moment, it made her chest tighten. This was the conversation they both needed to have, but it was one that neither of them had wanted to face. "I think it's time for us to figure out where we go from here," Emily continued, her words coming out more quickly now. "Can we really keep this going while still maintaining our professional lives? Can we balance our relationship with the demands of work?" There was a long pause. Emily wasn't sure if William was taking time to think or if he simply didn't know how to respond. After a few moments, he spoke again, his voice calm but tinged with uncertainty. "Emily, I've been wondering the same thing. We've both worked so hard to get to where we are, and I don't want to risk either of our careers because of what's happening between us. But I also don't want to lose you." His words hit Emily harder than she expected. She had known that he cared for her, but hearing him admit that he didn't want to lose her made everything feel more real. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about their connection, their emotions, and the future that they might or might not have together. "I don't want to lose you either," Emily whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "But I don't know how we can keep going like this. It's becoming harder and harder to keep things separate. I can't keep working in a constant state of uncertainty. I need to know if we're moving forward together or if we're just delaying the inevitable." William sighed on the other end of the line. "I understand, Emily. I think we need to make a choice. We can't keep walking this fine line between work and our feelings. It's too risky." The weight of his words settled heavily on Emily's shoulders. She knew he was right. It wasn't sustainable. They couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Something had to give, and it had to be now. After a moment of silence, Emily spoke again, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I think we need to take a step back, at least for now. I want to focus on my career, and I know you have a lot on your plate too. Maybe it's best if we take some time apart to figure out what we really want and where this relationship fits in our lives." William didn't respond immediately, and for a brief moment, Emily thought she had lost him. But then he spoke, his voice gentle. "I agree. It's not what I want, but I think it's what we need right now. We both have a lot to focus on, and we can't let this relationship jeopardize everything we've worked for. Let's take a break and see where we are after some time. Emily felt a mixture of relief and sadness wash over her. She knew it was the right decision, but it didn't make it any easier. Their connection was strong, and the thought of stepping away from it was heartbreaking. But she had to be realistic. She had to put her career first, and she couldn't do that while constantly worrying about what might happen between her and William. As the conversation came to an end, Emily felt a sense of closure, but also an overwhelming sadness. She had made a decision, and while it was the best one for her future, it didn't make the heartbreak any easier to bear. She knew that they needed time apart to figure out what was truly important to both of them, and whether they could find a way to make their relationship work without compromising their professional lives. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt uncertain about the future, but she also knew that sometimes the hardest decisions were the ones that would lead to the greatest growth. She wasn't sure where things would go with William, but she was determined to focus on herself and her career one step at a time. And whatever happened, she would be okay. The defining moments, the days following Emily's conversation with William, had been filled with internal conflict. The words they had shared still lingered in her mind, and she found herself caught between two worlds: her blossoming career at the hotel and the growing feelings she had for him. Emily had always been driven by her ambition, but now she couldn't help but wonder if she was sacrificing something deeper for the sake of her success. She had poured herself into her work, focusing all of her energy on proving herself in the hotel industry. After all, the stakes were high. She had worked hard to get to where she was, and the idea of letting everything slip away was something she couldn't bear. She was determined to succeed, to rise through the ranks, to prove that she was more than just a talented intern. The success of the hotel meant everything to her after all. It was the place where her dreams had begun to take shape. Yet, the more time passed, the more Emily realized that there was a part of her that was missing. She had been so consumed by her work that she had overlooked the importance of what was happening in her heart. Her feelings for William weren't something she could simply dismiss. Their connection, their bond, it was real. She had never expected a fall for him. And now, with the choice ahead of her, she wasn't sure if she was ready to let go of it. One evening, as Emily sat at her desk reviewing reports, the weight of her decisions pressed down on her. The office was quiet, and the only sound was the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above her. She had been trying to block out the noise, the conversations in her mind, the worries, the doubts, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. She was at a crossroads, and she couldn't ignore it any longer. What would she do? Was she ready to leave everything she had worked so hard for behind, just for a shot at love? Or could she find a way to have both? She had seen in movies and read about it in books the idea of balancing love and career seemed like a fairy tale. But was it truly possible in the real world, especially in the high-pressure environment of a hotel like Dax Corp? Emily leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling as she tried to make sense of her emotions. She loved her job. She had dedicated so much time to it, and she had made incredible progress. But her feelings for William were undeniable. He had been a source of support, encouragement, and unexpected kindness in a world that often felt like it was moving too fast. He wasn't just her boss. He had become someone she genuinely cared about. Yet, the thought of their relationship complicating her career haunted her. How could she maintain that delicate balance? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. She quickly sat up, trying to push away the tension that had been building inside her. When she looked up, William was standing in the doorway, his expression calm but serious. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked, his voice steady. "Of course," Emily replied, standing up and walking toward him. She had been expecting this moment, had been waiting for it. William's presence was both comforting and daunting. She wasn't sure if she was ready for another conversation that could change everything. As they sat down at her desk, Emily could feel the weight of his gaze on her. She knew that he had been thinking about their conversation, just as she had. And now, it seemed that they were both ready to face the reality of their situation. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," William began, his tone measured. I know we've been avoiding this, but I think it's time we talk about what's really going on between us. About us, Emily. Emily felt her heart skip a beat at his words. She had been hoping for this moment, but now that it was here, she felt a sense of fear rising inside her. What if they were too different? What if their professional lives were simply too incompatible for them to find a way to be together? I've been thinking too, Emily replied, her voice quiet but firm. About everything: the hotel, my career, and us. William nodded, his expression softening. I know how important your work is to you. You've made that clear, and I admire your dedication. But I also know that you're struggling to balance it all. Emily looked down, her hands clasped tightly together. She had been struggling, that was true, but she didn't want to appear weak, not in front of him. I love my job. I really do. It's everything I've worked for. But I also care about you, William. And I'm afraid that if I let myself fall too deeply into this relationship, I'll lose everything I've worked for. There it was. The truth. The fear that had been simmering inside her for weeks. She wasn't sure if she could have both love and career. But deep down, she wanted to try. She wanted to believe that there was a way to make it work. William reached across the desk and gently placed his hand over hers. I'm not asking you to give up your career, and I'm not asking you to choose between your dreams and me. But I do want you to know that I'm here, and I'm willing to work with you, no matter what it takes. Emily looked up at him, her heart swelling with a mixture of emotions. He wasn't asking her to sacrifice her ambitions. He was asking her to let him be a part of her journey. That meant everything to her. But was she strong enough to make that choice? To trust in both her love for him and her passion for her work? She took a deep breath, steadying herself. I think we need to find a way to make this work, she said softly. I don't want to lose either of you, my career or you. I want to find a balance, and I believe we can do that if we're both committed to it. William smiled, and Emily could feel the tension lifting from her shoulders. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of clarity. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face whatever challenges came her way. She didn't have to choose between her career and her love for William. She just had to find a way to make both work side by side. Then let's do it, William said, his voice filled with determination. Let's make this work. Emily smiled back, a sense of peace washing over her. She had made a decision, and while the journey ahead was uncertain, she knew one thing for sure. She didn't have to do it alone. With William by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The final choice: Emily stood at the crossroads of her life, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on her chest. Her heart and mind were both at war, each pulling her in a different direction. She had spent months trying to balance her career at the hotel and her growing feelings for William, the man who had become more than just a colleague. And now, it was time to make a choice. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind. She had witnessed firsthand how a relationship could complicate even the most well-established professional environments. There had been moments where the lines between work and personal life blurred, moments when the stress of keeping their relationship a secret from the rest of the company had almost torn them apart. Yet, despite all the challenges, Emily realized that she could no longer ignore the feelings that had blossomed between her and William. She had always been focused on her career. She had worked tirelessly to prove herself, to climb the corporate ladder and make a name for herself in the hotel industry. But as much as she loved her work, she couldn't deny the truth any longer. She loved William, too. The connection they shared wasn't just a fleeting attraction, it was something deeper, something worth fighting for. But could she have both? Could she continue to pursue her career at Dax Corp while nurturing a relationship with her boss? Emily took a deep breath as she stared out of the window of her apartment, the city lights twinkling in the distance. It had been a long journey, but she had finally come to a realization. She couldn't keep living in limbo, torn between her ambitions and her heart. She needed to choose, to make a decision that would allow her to move forward, to stop pretending that everything could stay the same. Her thoughts drifted back to the conversations she had shared with William, the way he had been there for her through the tough moments, the way he supported her both professionally and personally. She had come to trust him, not just as a colleague, but as someone who cared for her deeply. The moments they spent together, both at work and outside of it, had shown her that their bond was strong. But there was still fear in her heart. Fear that choosing love might mean sacrificing her career, or that being with William could create even more complications at the hotel. Still, she couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Emily had always prided herself on being a hard worker, on putting her career first. But the past few months had taught her something important. Love was worth fighting for. And if she and William were going to make it work, they needed to be in it together. She couldn't live her life constantly fearing what could go wrong. Instead, she had to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. Taking a deep breath, Emily picked up her phone and dialed William's number. It was time to talk. She had made up her mind, and now it was time to face him with the decision that would change everything. When William answered the phone, his voice was warm and comforting, just like always. "Hey, Emily, what's going on? I need to talk to you," Emily replied, her voice steady but filled with determination. "About us. About everything." There was a brief silence on the other end, and then William spoke again. "I'm listening. I've been thinking a lot about where we stand," Emily began, her words measured and thoughtful. "And about what I want, what I need. And I've realized something." William's voice was quiet but patient. "What's that?" "I want both. I want my career, and I want to be with you," Emily said, her voice firm with conviction. "I know it won't be easy. I know there will be challenges. But I'm willing to face them with you. I want to build something with you, both in our personal lives and at work." William let out a breath, and for a moment, Emily wondered if he was going to say something that would make her second-guess herself. But when he spoke, his words were full of understanding and care. "I've been thinking about this too, Emily. I know this isn't going to be easy, but I want the same thing. I want to build a future with you, both in and out of the office. We'll face the challenges together, but I believe in us. I believe in you." A sense of relief washed over Emily as she listened to William's words. She had made the right choice, and she knew that with his support, they could navigate the difficulties ahead. The weight on her chest lifted, and for the first time in a long time, she felt free. Free to pursue her career with passion, and free to love William without fear of the consequences. "I'm glad to hear that," Emily replied, her voice soft with emotion. "I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready. I'm ready to take this step, and I'm ready to make it work." There was a pause before William spoke again, his voice full of warmth. "So are we in this together? No matter what." "We're in this together," Emily said with confidence. "No matter what." In that moment, everything felt right. The future wasn't certain, but with William by her side, Emily knew that they could handle whatever came their way. She was ready to face the challenges of balancing her career and her love life, and she was ready to take on whatever came next. As Emily hung up the phone, she couldn't help but smile. The choice had been difficult, but it was the right one. She had chosen love, she had chosen her career, and she was ready to move forward with both. The journey ahead might be uncertain, but Emily knew one thing for sure. With William by her side, anything was possible. Open-ending. The relationship evolves as the months passed. Emily and William continued to navigate the complex dynamics of their professional and personal lives. What started as a challenging and somewhat uncertain journey had gradually transformed into something meaningful. They had faced their fair share of obstacles, from the pressures of their respective careers to the challenges that came with maintaining a secret relationship in the workplace. But despite all the difficulties, Emily and William had found a way to make it work, and it seemed that their bond only grew stronger with each passing day. Their relationship, once clouded by uncertainty, had evolved into a beautiful partnership. They were no longer just two people trying to balance love and work. They were a team. They had become each other's support system, lifting each other up when things got tough. In the office, they had mastered the art of keeping their personal lives separate from their professional ones. They worked together seamlessly, each bringing their strengths to the table and complementing one another in ways they had never imagined. Emily had grown tremendously since that first chaotic day at Dax Corporation. She had started as an intern, unsure of her place in the corporate world, but she had proven herself to be a valuable asset to the team. Her skills, creativity, and ability to think outside the box had earned her the respect of her colleagues and, more importantly, of William. She had taken on bigger projects, built stronger relationships with clients, and had earned the trust of her superiors. It was clear that her career was headed in the right direction. But despite her professional success, it was her relationship with William that had truly transformed her. What began as a forbidden attraction had blossomed into something deeper, something that transcended the walls of the office. They had shared intimate moments, not just during late-night work sessions, but also in the quiet moments outside of work, cooking together, taking walks in the park, and talking about their hopes, fears, and dreams for the future. They were more than just colleagues. They were partners in every sense of the word. William, too, had changed over the months. Once the stern and distant CO, he had slowly opened up to Emily in ways he hadn't with anyone before. He had always prided himself on his professionalism and control, but with Emily, he found himself letting his guard down. Her warmth, humor, and unwavering support had brought a sense of balance to his life that he hadn't realized he needed. Emily had become his confidant, someone he could rely on both personally and professionally. And as their relationship deepened, so did his respect for her. He admired her strength, determination, and ability to rise above challenges. But it wasn't just their work lives that had flourished, it was their personal connection as well. They had learned to communicate openly and honestly, something that hadn't come easily at first. There had been moments of tension, moments where they doubted if they could truly have it all, but they had always found a way to work through it together. They had learned to support one another, to be patient, and to trust that they were both committed to making it work. One evening, as they sat in their favorite restaurant, enjoying a quiet dinner together, William reached across the table and took Emily's hand. "You know, when we first started all of this, I wasn't sure how it would turn out," he said, his voice soft but filled with sincerity. "But I can honestly say, I've never been happier. We made it work, Emily, and I think that says something." Emily smiled, feeling her heart swell with warmth. "I never thought we'd get here either, but I'm glad we did," she replied, her thumb gently stroking the back of his hand. "We've been through so much, and we've come out stronger because of it." William leaned back in his chair, his eyes studying her with a look of admiration. "You've become more than just a colleague to me, Emily. You've become someone I can't imagine my life without. And I'm not just talking about work. I'm talking about everything." Emily's heart skipped a beat at his words. "I feel the same way. You're not just my boss, William. You're my partner, in every sense of the word." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The connection between them was undeniable, and in that silence, they both knew that their bond had deepened in ways they couldn't have anticipated when they first met. They had built something real and lasting, something that went beyond their roles at the hotel and their professional achievements. As the night drew to a close, they walked out of the restaurant hand in hand, the city lights twinkling around them. They were both aware of the challenges that lay ahead, but they also knew that together, they could face anything. Their relationship had been tested, but it had only grown stronger as a result. In the days that followed, they continued to navigate their lives with the same sense of balance and mutual respect that had brought them this far. Emily's career flourished, and William's leadership at Dax Corp remained steady, but they had found something more important than success each other. They had built a relationship that was based on trust, love, and a shared commitment to overcoming obstacles. And so, as they walked side by side through life, Emily and William knew that they had found something rare, something worth cherishing. Their love had flourished against all odds, and with each passing day, they grew closer, ready to face whatever the future held. Together. Thank you for watching this hotel romance story. We hope you enjoyed the journey with Emily and William. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Stories TH to stay updated with more heartwarming tales. Your support means a lot to us. See you in the next video.